From the studios deep in the Ray Mattis Cave, we are live and well and ready to reopen 757 and move Virginia forward. So anyway, I'd like to really welcome everybody today, May 15th, for our reopen of 757 briefing. We are joined by our statewide lobbyist, Jody Roth, who will be discussing the legislative updates from a federal perspective as well as a state. This week, we're also joined by Tara Jones from Fulton Bank. Thank you for joining us today, both Jody and Tara. Tara will be providing any financial relief program updates that we've talked about as it relates to the PPP and the EIDL loans. As part of the Reopen 757 campaign, we will also have our own Kylie Ross Seibert, our VP of Corporate Communications, and she will be talking about the de-escalation techniques you and your staff can use when dealing with unruly customers. We also have Jenny Crittenton is planning to join us. She is with the Gloucester Main Street Preservation and should be discussing the reopening processes and what guidelines have been set forth by the governor. Jenny serves on the governor's task force, and so she has a lot of inside information to help guide us through this reopening phase. Just as a reminder, all your questions can be submitted on Zoom in the chat box. So let's jump right on in. Before we begin, if you can please make sure you mute your speakers so we don't get a lot of background noise. And then if you needed to ask a question and you wanted to do it as opposed to going in the chat section of Zoom, you can unmute at that time. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our own Jody Roth.
Thanks, Ray. Good morning, everyone. In terms of legislative update, the only thing I have really is on the federal level. Some of you probably already are aware that Pelosi initiated another round of funding, which the Senate and President Trump have already said is going to be dead on arrival, given the fact that there are numerous funding mechanisms within the legislation that do not pertain to coronavirus. So we're waiting to see, watching that move along, or not move along, I should say. That is where we are on the federal side. On the state side, we haven't been in session since March. We already updated everybody on what happened during veto session with the delay in minimum wage until May 2021. We are working with the coalition to put together a one-pager in case they do decide to have a special session to address coronavirus. Other states have run legislation for coronavirus protecting the employer, but they are still in session. So in Virginia, obviously we're not. So in order for that to happen here, they would have to call for a special session. We do have we're still working with the same coalition that we did during session. We had our call Tuesday. There is a white paper out that lays out our position on each issue that we are concerned with. One is employer liability protection legislation for coronavirus. One pertains to the paid sick leave, and the other is unemployment and insurance rates. We have that ready and to go if need be. We hope that we honestly don't have a special session, but if we do, we are ready to roll out and submit that to the press, the administration, and all 140 members of the General Assembly. Most of you, or all of you, should have received our guidelines on phase 1 reopening that was sent out by the VRF Saturday morning. We received them 11:30 Friday night, and we turned it around and got it out to you as soon as we could Saturday morning. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. I wish everyone a successful reopening.
Jody, I understand that in the new federal stimulus package that is being presented by the House, they're going to extend the unemployment to January so that theoretically a lot of the workers will be making more than what they're currently getting paid by our businesses. And that's
Correct.
going to really be a hardship on many of our members. Can you address that at all?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons that the president is adamant and Mitch McConnell that it's not going to get through the Senate and to the president. You know, for all the reasons you just laid out, it's a bad idea. They're already catching heat on how much the employees are making now already with unemployment. And given the fact that states are moving to reopen gradually and hope to be fully open by August, with each phase, hopefully not even that late, by mid-July, that you know, folks will go back to work and our unemployment rates will come down. So one more reason would be we don't want to incentivize people to not get back to work. And that's exactly what that does. I don't see it coming to fruition.
Do we have any questions from Jody? For Jody? Well, I thank you for that update, Jody. Joey, do we have Tara on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Tara, good morning. So
Good morning.
Welcome Tara Jones. We're pleased that Tara is with us again this week, and she can share any updates on the application process, the dates for filing, etc. She'll be available to answer any questions, so please feel free to post any questions you have in the chat box. Tara?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I don't have a lot to update. I do want to share that the safe harbor date that was originally for May the 14th has been moved back to May the 18th. So a lot of financial institutions are sending out emails to business owners that apply for the PPP, sending out just a general notification to them that if they wanted to take advantage of that time to repay the PPP back, they could. The safe harbor was put into place for borrowers that may have applied for the PPP under good faith that they needed the funds, but then after further review, they realized that those funds were not needed and that it allows them a date to be able to repay that money back to the SBA before any kind of review process is done by the SBA after the fact. They did bring in some clarification with regarding additional guidance for businesses who have changes of ownership. So we have encountered some businesses who did have some change of ownership where they have either acquired through asset purchase, stock purchase, or with regarding or resulting in their business. So under the new guidance, they are stating that those businesses are eligible for the PPP if it was done on February 15th, on or after February 15th of 2020. Also, too, the SBA did put out a interim rule. We have had some customers ourselves here at Fulton Bank that have come back and asked for increases in their PPP, and we are doing those. So if any businesses were to reevaluate their finances, partnerships who might not have been able to include compensation for their partners, or seasonal employers who was not able to really determine their max loan amount until after the guidance came back about how that should be calculated. What they're saying is those individuals can go back and apply for an increase. And what banks are doing is just redoing, going back in, re-getting a new E-Train number for the additional amount, and then redoing loan documents for that individual to be able to sign. Because there are funds that are available, that is something that can be done pretty quickly. I myself have done a few of those things. Also, too, I wanted to remind a lot of business owners that there are opportunities that are available through the cities. Norfolk Economic Development. I don't know how many people are familiar with Sean Washington. He's in charge of the grant programs. They have come up with a loan for businesses that have been affected by COVID. I think they're working in conjunction with Virginia Community Capital to facilitate an opportunity to be able to lend money to borrowers that have not necessarily taken advantage of the other loan programs that are available. So if someone was interested, definitely give him a call and find out what the terms are around that. Under the first run that they did, they gave out about $35,000. They were doing it at a 2.8% rate, and the terms were anywhere from 3 to 5 years. I don't know if that has changed now that they're doing a second run on it, but it's definitely worth business owners to be able to contact him to see what kind of things that they have to offer. Virginia Beach Economic has followed suit. They too are offering a actual grant program, so it's not any kind of repayment, where they're offering business owners up to $10,000 that have been affected by the COVID. So they should really go out on the website. There are guidelines about who can apply, what the deadlines are, and the application process with regards to them. So, definitely reach out to their prospective cities because there might be opportunity for them to have some type of relief as well.
Tara, I have a question regarding the EIDL loan, and I had a member that had a question about this. So if we understand it correctly, on the EIDL loan, there is a $10,000 grant that is basically forgivable, I guess you can apply for. And then there's also EIDL money that you can apply for that is a loan. Am I correct in that?
Yes. Yes. A lot of people that went through the process for applying for the EIDL was offered an opportunity to get an advance, which was a $10,000 grant while they wait for their loan to be processed, which was $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. And yes, the funds that was received by the individual would be considered a grant, but I also understand it to be that it would be subtracted away from the actual amount that is given to them from a loan standpoint.
And just to be clear, you cannot qualify for both the EIDL and the PPP.
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
You can't. You can apply for both because both programs have different reasons or needs. The PPP was, directly for payroll expenses with regards to lease, buildings, utilities, versus the EIDL encompassed all business assets, but not business assets, excuse me, all business expenses.
Okay, that's good. That's good to clarify that. So the $10,000 is a grant, so they do not have to pay that back, but then they can also get other monies that would be at a lower interest rate that they would have to pay back.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and they can apply for both the PPP and the EIDL grants during the same time. Okay, that's good. Do you have anything else for us, Tara?
No, that's all I had to share.
Okay, any questions for Tara? Joey, we've got anything coming in? I don't really see anything.
No, not at this time, Ray.
Okay. Well, we're going to move on to the next phase of the coronavirus pandemic. And since we've all been stay at home, now it's safe at home. We're going into phase 1 that is being launched today. We have our Jenny Crittenton from the Gloucester Main Street Preservation Trust and a Retail Alliance board member. She's here with us to talk about the reopening and process, and she's going to review in detail the guidelines that has been put forth by the governor. As a member of the governor's business task force, Jenny brings firsthand experience and knowledge to the reopening process. So Jenny, you could please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm sorry I couldn't join you all by video. I have a new laptop on order. This thing has been a wreck, so sorry about that. But happy I could join you by phone. So I'm hoping everyone has actually seen the PDF. It might seem a little bit daunting when you start to print out all the pages. I will say that one of the things we're working with our businesses here in downtown Gloucester is to sort of bite this off in pieces. So don't become overwhelmed when you're printing out 22 pages of something, but to focus in first off on the guidelines for all business sectors, and then secondly, to look in essence at the mandatory requirements that are related to your specific business, because there's businesses fall under, restaurant and beverage or brick and mortar retail or personal care or personal grooming, and some of those guidelines transfer slightly differently across the board. But in essence, I mean, we can certainly walk through them specifically, but what you're looking at is, physical distancing is still going to be something that's going to be focused on throughout all phases. So get very used to the fact that we are still staying 6 feet apart. And then thinking in terms of like with your coworkers, your employees, how do you create workstations and such, or environments in which you can keep your employees 6 feet apart. Any employee as well that is front facing with the public must wear a mask. They initially were going to mandate ones that were, washable and reusable. They did relax a little bit and just basically said a face covering. So they prefer the washable kind, but certainly even if you had a bandana, so if there's a business that's, flipping out about the cost, they've got 40 employees and they've got to go out and buy all these things and now they've got to wash them 3 times a week, it gets pricey. So just understand as long as it's a face covering of some sort. The signage is a big one. So thinking at the beginning, the entrance to your building and the exits to your building, and potentially in different places depending on the size of your business. Throughout your business, there are 2 types of signage, and one of them is related to physical distancing. So, reminding people as they're coming in to please stay 6 feet apart, and to please wear a face covering. So you're not going to, the only industry that I can see thus far that is a bit more in the mode of having to make a client wear a face mask is the personal care and personal grooming. So if you own a salon or a barber shop or you're getting a massage, these are considered touch businesses. And with the touch businesses, because you are getting so close to a customer, touching them, they are saying that it is a requirement for the customer to wear a mask and for you, the provider of that service, to wear a mask. And if there is a service that requires a customer to remove said mask, then that service cannot be performed. The other signage is related to just basically saying, hey, if you've had any of the COVID-19 symptoms in the past 14 days, or you've been around someone who has had COVID in the last 14 days, you may not enter the establishment. So certainly that needs to be at your entrance, and the reminders of social distancing, depending on the size of your business, could be just at the entrance if you're tiny, or it could be in different locations throughout the business. Also thinking if you are a retail business and you have a checkout area, they want you to demarcate on the floor the 6-foot distancing. A lot of us are already seeing that in grocery stores. I know even in my little local grocery store in Deltaville, there's big giant circles on the floor that say 6 feet, please stand here. And it could be something as simple as that, or you could take an opportunity I don't think this social distancing thing is going to go away for a while, so possibly take the opportunity and brand your business in a friendly way. And, you know, have something on the floor that says, we care about our customers. Please social distance 6 feet apart. Something along those lines to sort of soften some of these messages. Up here on Main Street, we are providing, in fact, I just had them delivered right before this call, signage in the form of a decal that was attractively designed that basically talks about the COVID-19 symptoms and not entering. We want to keep our community well, but we're so glad to see you. So the messaging is still positive, but yet we're also making sure we're using all the proper language that is supposed to be included in those messaging. If you can still telework. The occupancy is what changed from the stay at home to safer at home. So if you're a retail store, think in terms of what your fire code occupancy is, and you may do 50% of that with social distancing. So if you're allowed 100 people, you can now have 50 people at a time. But if you can't social distance 6 feet apart with 50 people, then you have to reduce that occupancy by that much more. So that's very individual to each business to figure that out. Cleaning. If you have a retail business, think in terms of where your high touch areas are. So where you're checking people out, touching, if you have like one of these iPads where you've got the stylus, every single time somebody is using that, you have to wipe that down in between each use. And then every 2 hours, you need to clean your surfaces with those EPA approved cleaning supplies. All of those links are in the guidelines, so that's why it looks like a book when you start to print everything out. But it's just more so having preparation. So hand sanitizer, again, for all businesses. You want to have hand sanitizer available at the entrance and exit. And for a lot of you, that might be the same door. And you may want to have it at your cash register. I'm hearing from some of my folks who are in the process of opening today that they're having a hard time finding hand sanitizer. And I wish I had the answer to that. I don't. I would say if you're a retailer and you happen to be near other restaurants by chance, maybe reach out to them and ask them where they're getting it. You may be able to share in an order through a Cisco or another purveyor where normally a retailer wouldn't be purchasing from. See if you can figure a way to partner with someone who's buying on a larger scale, where you may be able to, you know, get a pump container and pour some into that and use it and share it. So just think in terms of how you might be able to do that. If you're having employee meetings, again, limiting those in-person work-related gatherings. A lot of conferences and trade shows obviously have been canceled. And let's see here, I'm just kind of working through. So one of the things, like I said, there's best practices, and then there is the aspects of what is mandatory. I would initially, if it were me opening a business, I'm going to focus in on the overall guidelines for the business sectors, making sure I'm doing those. And then I'm going to look at what my mandatory requirements are under what my business type is. And then once you get that down, right, because we're teaching our employees to think differently, act differently, we're training the public to think differently and act differently. And then once we get that part nailed down, I kind of view it almost as the governor is with phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is, I think for a business, is really getting down these mandatory requirements so that everybody's really comfortable with how we need to function on a daily basis. And then start to look at the best practices that are under each of your industry sectors, and then start to look through that list and say, okay, what is here that is reasonable that I can do that would further instill confidence in my customer, that would make them feel comfortable in coming into my establishment. One of the things that I get nervous about, and because I jumped on the call late, I'm not sure if Jody is on or not. but
I'm here.
I'm okay, good. I'm not a huge fan of being responsible for temperature checks on your employees. Through the task force, it is one of the things that we actually, for the most part, got removed from the mandatory side. And that is because, in my opinion, and it's just mine, limited, that I feel it potentially sets the employer for liability. And someone could take Tylenol. There was even talk at one point of taking temperatures of your customers. And that's ridiculous. I mean, you just can't do that. Besides, if people decide to come to your establishment, they'll probably say whatever they want in order to get inside. So a lot of this is self-monitoring and trusting people that, you know, if you've been around someone, please don't come in. It's a reminder, but be careful of the liability as an employer that you take on. Now, with that being said, there are some industries, and Jody can speak to this too, particularly in the salon industry. I know here with one of our salon owners, the guidelines that they will be instituting are actually much more stringent than what the state is saying they need to do, because they have various certifications that they need to keep. And in order to keep those certain certifications, they have to abide by a certain industry guideline. So in some cases, the industry guidelines, for lack of a better way to say it, may even trump the state guidelines, because they might even have more guidelines in place that you have to follow. So if you are in one of those industries like salon, massage, breweries, I think they've had a whole sector of guidelines that have been pushed out. You know, start to look and say, okay, what's mandatory there, what's mandatory at the state, kind of blend that plan together, and then try to enact it. I think that's a lot of the highlights, Ray. If anybody has like specific questions.
A couple of things, Jenny, and thank you for that. Kylie has posted in the chat box the guidelines set forth by the state. Keep in mind there are 6 distinct different categories, and there's guidelines specific to each one of those categories. One thing I'd like to ask Jenny is, if we had a business, a retail business that defied the order, what is the penalty? Is it fines? Is it a misdemeanor? Is it arrest? What is it?
Well, you know, that's a good question. I've heard of some things happening. I've heard of a brewery recently getting a fine because this was prior, obviously, to phase 1, where they could do to-go growlers, and a couple came in and got a to-go growler. Then they got to-go food from somewhere else and went and sat on the brewery patio. And I don't know the backstory, if maybe, you know, the brewery owner had been warned already, but he was given a hefty little fine for that. So, you know, I have here today, so we have a couple of our restaurants who do have patio space opening today. A lot of them are saying what we're going to do first is we're going to stay with our to-go only right now, but welcome them to sit outside. Because sometimes it's just not cost effective to bring in servers to just serve, you know, 7 tables or whatever it might be. So that's how they're focusing this. But I've also heard it's, you know, the Department of Health could certainly come out and see something. The local law enforcement, I believe, has the ability or the authority to do that. It's, you know, here in Gloucester, I highly doubt that would happen. But in different localities, oh my God, I mean, across the country, you've had officers, I mean, this sounds insane, who have like tased people, you know, who have been out running on the beach who weren't supposed to be there. So it's just, God. I think it's super individual, probably to where you live. But yes, there could be fines.
I believe it's a class 1 misdemeanor, the governor said, and it would be a class 1 misdemeanor. He was asked the question on how they are going to police this. And he indicated that, you know, there will be an uptick in law enforcement cruising around. but also it would, they would be relying heavily on complaints. And the complaints that they will most likely get will be employees.
Yeah. And I think, remind me if I'm correct, Jody, the misdemeanor was like you would get a warning first, and then after that, you would
Correct.
potentially get a fine.
Correct.
Yeah. I've been asked that too, Ray. I had a restaurant owner who specifically just said, well, what if I just go back to full service anyway, because I feel like it?
Yeah, I think
So,
the fine is $2,500. I
Yep.
believe.
And
Yeah.
that's what that brewery got.
And so there have been businesses who said they would rather just pay the fine and open. It would be
Yeah.
more lucrative for them to do.
It's
Yeah.
really going to be interesting to watch. And then, of course, you look what happened in Dallas, and good God, she was put in jail for a few days.
Yeah, but still ended up being the best thing for her, apparently.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
I think her business.
I ran into
Oh.
a salon recently that never closed down. And matter of fact, they've had law enforcement that came in just to make sure that they had the safe distancing, but yet they were never fined or anything, never closed down. It was just curious. And you hear about all the constitutional proponents out there saying it's unconstitutional to shut somebody down. It was interesting because I have had a couple of business owners ask us, so what happens if I defy the order? And I really didn't have an answer. So that's
you could get a fine for sure, but Jody's right. We have been saying this too. One of the things, it wasn't me who said it, but it was actually a very poignant thing to say on the task force. It was one of the business owners on it who said, the government can do all they can to say this is when we are opening, but in essence, it will be the consumer that probably makes that decision. So once you see people out who are saying we want to open, and that becomes a louder and louder and louder voice, I think we will start to see emboldened business owners who say, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and try this, because like you said, if you're a sizable business and a $2,500 fine is what you're facing, but then you're going to can still, function like you want to. I just don't know what the pitfall will be on the back end of that, because I don't think we've yet been faced with it. So I'm not quite sure how they'll react. I think we can only hope and pray that this phase 1 is 2 weeks and we can quickly jump into phase 2, and hopefully not in that very long. And then we can roll to phase 3. I do believe phase 3, Jody, do you remember? I think it lifts all social distancing.
Sorry, I was on mute. In phase 3?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, depending on how this goes, the governor has alluded to the fact that it could be as early as phase 3 implemented by the 1st of July. It just depends, or mid-July. But who knows what to believe.
Here's hoping.
Yeah.
For sure.
a couple of things that came up on the chat box. Carlisle reports that Vanguard Brewery in Hampton is selling sanitizer by the gallon. Sarah Pishko is reporting that Copper Fox Distillery in Williamsburg is selling sanitizer. Brenda has a question regarding, I believe it's the decals. Where did you order your decals with all of the COVID information on?
Mm-hmm. I ordered them through Scotty Signs with Paul Martin. His company is out of Newport News, but he lives here in Gloucester, and he and I are friends. And so I shot him a note and I said, this signage is just so unfriendly. How can we make it a little bit more friendly? So we used the proper wording, but then we did things like where we say, please, wear your mask. We put a little message underneath of it. We know you're smiling underneath of there. Just to try to keep it friendly. This has been such a stressful time for so many people. And the last thing you want to do as a business owner is put up a very unfriendly message on the front door. So we just came up with some creative ways to give the message we're supposed to give with the correct wording, but at the same time, soften it. And I'm happy to actually send that to you guys if you want to see what we ordered.
Matt, Total Business Solutions has hand sanitizer, TP, as well as mask. They are selling cleaning
All right.
for businesses too. They are located in Portsmouth on Griffith Street, and that's also in the Ironclad Distillery in Newport News is still manufacturing hand sanitizer.
That's great.
Some other questions that I have. West Side Produce in Norfolk has the Copper Fox Distillery sanitizer. Just an FYI. Let me ask you this, Jenny. So you have different categories. When you're looking at an apparel store, what do you do with tailors who are altering clothes? How do you perform safe distancing there?
I think, if it were me, and if you really want to be, really cautious and put in place, maybe even go beyond what the brick and mortar retail is, I would potentially take a peek over at the personal services section, which is, that barbershop and salons and stuff, because that you're getting certainly with, much closer than 6 feet, you're touching someone. And that's where I would probably say, if we're going to do some type of a tailoring service for you, I need you to wear a mask, and then I'm going to wear a mask, and maybe you even wear gloves, and just take that extra step for something like that. That's what I would do.
Okay. One thing I like to point out, and we talked about this prior to the briefing this morning, but I like to point out that the task force is made up of a lot of responsible individuals. And I've noticed on social media that some of the task force members have been listed by some of the angry businesses that are unable to accommodate outside seating in a restaurant, or the beach closures, or things of that nature. And the role of the task force is to guide and to recommend. They are not the decision-making body for the different phases.
No, not at all. No.
They recommend to the governor's office, and then the governor's office actually makes the final decision. So I just want to commend the members on the task force, and I think it's prudent not to lay blame on the members of the task force for trying to help the guiding these different phases and guidelines.
No, and I mean, for me, honestly, I'm such a transparent person anyway. So I mean, I'll tell you, the process was really very simple. It was 3 phone calls. Each one of them lasted 2.5 hours. You had over 30 people on the call. Plus you had the staff under the administration, particularly from Commerce and Trade and from the Department of Health. And the discussions were moderated and led by them. And so basically we were asked pointed questions, and then we were given a set of draft guidelines that we then had a very limited time to respond to. And so, you take those things home with you at night and you're reviewing them. And, in my mind, I'm thinking, because that's what I was asked to do, is to think from the standpoint of small brick and mortar. And I was working with another young lady on the task force who was which was more so representing larger brick and mortar. And we even talked back and forth to make sure we had the same messaging related to the sector that we were asked to respond to. And there were some things in there that we got removed. So we felt like at least that was a win, but it was, it is frustrating. And it's because I think there's this misrepresentation that the task force is picking the dates of when we open and how we open. And and who's closing down, like Richmond, decide city of Richmond. I got a text last night at 10:30 from someone. Why is the city of Richmond not opening? Well, that's not up to me. So that's up to the mayor apparently. So, the localities even have some decision making in this, but we had absolutely no input into the timeline whatsoever. And to be honest with you, we only had but so much input into the development of the guidelines. I mean, in essence, they're taking what other states have done, they're putting it in front of you and saying, what do you think works here and what doesn't?
Well, I just wanted to emphasize that we appreciate your representation of retail on that task force. I mean, if Bruce Thompson can't get the beach open for Memorial Day, and he serves on that task force,
Yeah.
And he
That says
tried.
a lot.
Jenny tried.
He did, and Jenny did an excellent job in representing small business and on the task force. And it's very disappointing. I view the task force, unfortunately, as just a check the box for them. I am a part of the trade association task force, if you will, which consists of VRF and NFIB, the Chamber, Home Builders Association, so on and so forth. We do have one more call on the 20th, but our calls consist of 30 minutes with 46 people. And the first 20 minutes of it is the cabinet giving a rundown of stuff that we already know. And then there's 10 minutes for questions within, and I mean, it's a hard stop at 30 minutes. So I just add that so people can understand that. They just really, as Ray mentioned, as the article says, they didn't listen. It's discouraging, it's disappointing.
It's a couple of times, and Jody and I have talked offline throughout this process because, certainly with her background with Virginia Retail Federation, I wanted to absolutely make sure that I was representing what I needed to in the messaging. I knew what I felt and what I thought was right, but I wanted to make sure. And so, this was definitely not an insular or vacuumed reaction in the guideline process, at least from my standpoint. And I have to tell you, there were a few times, and I said it on our Virginia Retail Federation meeting, I probably wasn't popular a couple of times, and that's fine. But things needed to be said, and small businesses in such a different place than, much larger businesses who might be able to weather a storm a little bit longer. And, small business has to end up being insanely creative and entrepreneurial and pivot their models in 72 hours and, figure out how they're going to keep their employees on, because their employees to them are family. They're not just a payroll stub. And so they had to start to think so differently. And so then when we start to look at the guidelines, I'm approaching it from the standpoint of, well, how much more is this going to cost them? Because this pandemic, which no one can control, has already cost them a lot of money. We can't make this any more difficult than it needs to be to just put in the proper safety measures that are reasonable. But every single day that we force someone to be closed, we are pushing them a day closer to a permanent failure. And I physically said that 3 times on the call. And I have to tell you, out of 30-some people on the call, at that time, I was the only one who said that. And so that was my first foray into something like that, but I still felt like it was important to say it because it's true, and not just go along with the feel-good fluff and, hey, this is great, this looks good, when I didn't think maybe some of it did. And I'm just being really, really honest with you.
Well, I tell you, from our perspective, you're a credit to the organization. You're a credit to small retailers. If you talk about advocacy and the value of having a legislative representative like Jody and Kate Baker, and in this case, Jenny Crittenton, they have just really stepped up during this crisis. They have really tried to bend the ear of our legislators And when you talk about dues and you talk about being a member of an association, this is when that advocacy really comes front and center. And I want to thank you, both of you, for that. We do have a question. Do you think that the phase 1 restrictions on restrooms and dressing rooms in retail clothing and consignment stores will be relaxed by June 1st?
I don't.
I don't either. And you know, who knows with this administration, they say one thing one day and then something the next. And I'm sorry, I'm being negative. I'm just dejected after yesterday and what they allowed the mayor to do in the city of Richmond.
Yeah.
After the governor made it very clear it had to be a regional approach. So I just don't know. I don't know what to believe coming out of this administration, honestly. And they're just not a business-friendly administration. But I will say that given how the guidelines are written now, I do not see that happening as soon as June 1st, given what they've put into phase 2. I'm hopeful that we'll be in phase 2 by June 1st.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
It's a changing world, ladies. I want to thank you so much. We have another question. Think that the COVID pandemic forces government to change directives. It's inevitable. I guess is more of a comment than it is a question or observation in that case. Are there any other questions for either Jenny or Jody? Joey, are we good on this to move on?
I think we are, Ray.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'd like to call on Kylie Seibert, our VP of Corporate Communications, for an update on what we're doing to try to communicate to our members. And I would really want to emphasize that Kylie will be reviewing this, but all of the guidelines are posted on our website, and it's also been communicated to our membership through our mass emails and all of our communication channels. So Kylie, take it on from here.
All right, well, thank you. My name's not up there, but I'm Kylie Ross Seibert, and I work with Ray and the team at Retail Alliance, if you have not met me before. I've added this slide in today because we have been approached by a couple of our members regarding just concerns for their employees with potential conflicts and volatility amongst customers with all of the requirements on retailers as they reopen, just with having to keep physical distancing and cleanliness and even checking temperatures in some regards with some businesses. So I thought we'd share something that actually Jenny Crittenden provided to our member. And so Joey has created this handout, which we will provide to you as a PDF. But it does have some really good tips for how to handle, and you can provide this to your employees, how to handle the volatile customers. So in there, I'm not going to go through them all, but I will just mention the top level really is to listen. As everyone knows, it is a very powerful tool, just to listen. Some people just want to be heard. And make sure that you're not distracted. When when the person's talking, don't be off doing something else and going, yep, just make sure you give them undivided attention. Remain calm, don't overreact, show empathy. Sympathy is one thing, but empathy is really, you need to have an understanding of, or express an understanding of what they're going through. Try and control your tone and body language. Sometimes it's the tone of the voice, sometimes it's a facial expression, being able to sort of just keep that calmness and be mindful of how you do your gestures too. So, and apologize, but don't apologize when it's not appropriate. Just apologize in the right situation. So anything that, may have been an unjust, situation on the customer's behalf, yes, apologize. Don't use cliches. I hate being told to calm down when I'm not calm. It's the last thing I can do. So make sure you don't use those sort of cliches. be courteous, but be consistent about it. And that's just something, as all your employees are brand ambassadors for your business. So, and we want them to be professional. Focus on the future. So rather than just talking about what's happened, let's talk about how you can actually resolve it and be positive about it. Recognize the personal limits, accept them. It's not easy to solve these problems. Sometimes you have to say, I'll come back, or I will need to ask for help from someone else. But, don't try and cover if you can't actually do what you're going to say you're going to do. And always just keep in mind that the primary objective is to keep everyone safe, whether it's your customers or your employees. But that's a copy of this, as I said, is going to be available. Looks like Joey's actually put it on the chat box to download directly. It's something that you can provide your employees in your training. So yeah, just wanted to share that. And each week we will continue to provide tips, for things as you reopen your business or considering reopening, just to be able to help you. Is there any questions regarding that? Okay. All right. I think we can move on. What's that say? Brenda, can you share a pic of your sticker? Oh, that's from Jody. Okay. That was I think that was actually not a share. I think that was actually for Jenny. Can you share a pic of the sticker so we don't have to recreate? So that's going back to the other topic. Jenny, if you're still on the line, I think it was the stickers that you had got Scotty signed to do. If you could.
Yeah, actually, I just emailed them to you, Joey, and Ray.
Okay, so we will make it available, because I don't think Jenny is able to be on the chat on the Zoom. She's actually on the phone, so we will provide that to everyone. Okay. So if we can move on to the next slide. All right, I will pass this back to Ray, or I can briefly mention it. Ray, you wanted to talk about this?
Yes, the masks. And I was just getting a question from both Tina and Beth. The masks, we are able to get several thousands of masks. We have been distributing them from our office between 8 and 12 o'clock Monday through Friday. Tina and Beth have also, as well as Teresa, have also been handing out the mask to our members. They are meant for businesses. We've been distributing them to both members and non-members, as long as they were a retail type of business. We have not been distributing them to consumers. They're not meant to be given to customers. They are available at our Norfolk office from the hours of 8 to 12, Monday through Friday. So next week we will be open for them as well. We want to have enough to try to get through the different phases in the event that the coronavirus does any type of spiking. We're seeing one person at a time, allowing them to enter the building. Beth Cook on the peninsula has been setting up distribution points. She's been emailing her members on where and when those distribution points are taking place. I think that's about all I have.
Ray, I just also wanted to make sure that we do give a shout out to the members that have been hosting us on the peninsula. Glazed Donuts, the Gloucester Main Street Graphic Trends, Persnickety Crane Cafe, Virginia Beer Company, and I think it was the downtown, if Beth's on the call, the downtown Hampton ladies also, I believe, helped out. But also wanted to give a shout out to WTKR and Wavy, 106.9 The Fox, FM 99, who all has helped us spread the word, which has been great, trying to get to people beyond our membership as well. So please, if you do know other business owners who are retail service, restaurants, anyone like that, small business, just give them our contact details, please. Happy to share some of these masks.
We want to just make sure that our business owners and their employees are to be protected. We also want to acknowledge those members on the peninsula who showed great support with Beth to help host these distribution sites. Glazed Donuts, Gloucester Main Street, Graphic Trends, Persniski Crane Cafe, the Virginia Beer Company, in downtown Hampton. So that has been a great help on the peninsula as far as getting the masks out. And we'll continue providing these masks until we run out. So,
yeah. And I know Beth made a comment earlier in the chat box, but her and Teresa, she said she got burnt, but I think she meant she actually got physically sunburnt with handing out some of these masks. But also thank you to Teresa for helping as well.
and just keep in mind that the masks can be rewashable up to 15 times. Also, they don't fog your glasses as much as a heavy duty cloth mask. And I'd like to also emphasize that these are not medical PPE masks. So it's not, we're not taking masks away from the frontline medical personnel. So these are just strictly for our businesses, and it's just to help them get through these different phases.
So please, the details are on our website if you do not note them down here. I know Beth is going to be at the Virginia Beer Company on Monday, but there may be also another location. I know she's going to be out delivering some. Tina may be able to do a location. We do have the Norfolk office, but we may do another additional location somewhere on the south side as well next week. So Tina will communicate that, and we will also do that via our website and social media. So
Kylie, I think we've given out close to 10,000 masks in the last week. So
we have. So
that's very encouraging.
It's a good start.
We had 40 different businesses come by our office yesterday morning between 8 and 12. So the word has gotten out. Do you have any other updates, Kylie?
There was just one. I just wanted to mention again all of the resources that are available. As you know, you move to reopen. Make sure you're up to date with everything that's going on. Just listing some of them there. They're on our website. They're on our YouTube Retail Alliance, channel. Ask our membership directors. We have the CROPS program coming up on June 1st. It is going to be a virtual program. There is scholarships available for that through if you're a Retail Alliance member. There is plenty of things to take advantage of, including your membership. And right now, as we've said before, we have opened up a lot of our things to non-members as well to really just support the whole retail community. So just wanted to reiterate that.
I'd like to emphasize on the certification program. It's going to be running for 13 weeks. As you mentioned, it does launch June 1st. It will be co-hosted by Mary Langbury, who's on the call today, as well as Tracy. We have close to about 22 interested students. I'm very excited about it being totally virtual. And with our two facilitators, I believe it's going to be very robust. Metrics are in place. There'll be a little bit of testing. And of course, at the end, there will be a live face-to-face Shark Tank type of format that we refer to as a minnow bucket. And that will be conducted as they present their business plans. So please, if you're interested in sending an employee, a manager trainee, professional development, you don't have to take the entire certificate program. You can take the different modules. There are 7 modules. Please contact either Beth, Tina, anybody with really Retail Alliance, myself, Tiffany McGee, who oversees the CROPS program. With that, our next briefing is next Friday, May 22nd. We have been conducting these briefings at 9:30. We would like for you to please chime in the chat box. We're looking at moving these back to 9 o'clock since many of our store owners are opening up their stores at 10. We wanted to give them ample amount of time to join us during these briefings and at the same time being able to have enough time to open up the stores. So if you could please vote through your chat, and we will let you know the next time. Joey and Kylie will send that out to you. Are we missing anything else, Kylie, Joey?
No, I just wanted to mention that, each week, as we've said, we're going to have a guest to share some tips on, helping your business to be able to reopen. So that will be a new one each time, and that will be included on our communications out to you.
Okay. I'd like to still thank Jenny Crittenton for joining us, Jody Roth, as well as Tara Jones. Thank you so much for bringing in your expertise and educating our members. Please stay safe. Have a great relaunch or an open of your businesses, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you.